Tackle poverty and inequality. Work. Work should provide a decent life for all, guaranteeing not just dignity and respect in the workplace, but also the income and leisure time to allow for a fulfilling life outside it. Under the Tories, pay has stagnated, while insecurity and inequality are rising. Work no longer guarantees a way out of poverty. Of 14.3 million people in poverty, 9 million live in families where at least one adult works. Real wages are still lower than before the financial crisis, while dividends paid to shareholders are up to 85%. Labour will eradicate in-work poverty in our first term by tackling the structural causes of poverty and inequality, such as low pay and high living costs, while raising the floor provided by our social safety net. Too many people have found themselves in a spiral of debt as wages fell and housing costs rose. Labour will cap the total amount that can be paid in overdraft fees or interest on a loan. We will rapidly introduce a real living wage of at least £10 per hour for all workers aged 16 and over, and use savings to public finances to help small businesses manage the extra cost. We will give workers a stake in the companies they work for, and a share of the profits they help create, by requiring large companies to set up inclusive ownership funds, IOFs. Up to 10% of a company will be owned collectively by employees, with dividend payments distributed equally among all, capped at £500 a year, and the rest being used to top up the Climate Apprenticeship Fund. The cap will rise to ensure that no more than 25% of dividends raised by IOFs are redistributed in this way. And we will explore other innovative ways of responding to low pay, including a pilot of universal basic income. Growing numbers of the workforce are self-employed. While for some this brings freedom and autonomy, it can also bring insecurity. Self-employed people will benefit from a broad range of our policies, from free childcare and full fibre broadband to face-to-face lending and business support through our Post Bank. We will also seek to develop tailored support and protections for the self-employed, including collective income protection insurance schemes, annual income assessments for those on universal credit, and better access to mortgages and pension schemes. We will tackle late payments that leave small businesses and the self-employed waiting months to be paid, including banning late payers from public procurement. Ministry for Employment Rights. Throughout history, working people in Britain have improved their lives by coming together to demand rights and protections. Even after decades in which workers' rights have been cut back and their unions' capacity to defend them have been slashed, the Tories believe that workers' terms and conditions should be dictated by employers on a take-it-or-leave-it basis. We are proud of the trade union movement's historic achievements in giving people a voice at work through collective action. It is not just part of our history, it is also part of our future. Only by shifting the balance of power back towards workers will we achieve decent wages, security and dignity at work. The next Labour government will transform people's lives for the better through the biggest extension of workers' rights in history. We will give working people a voice at the cabinet table by establishing a ministry for employment rights. We will start to roll out sectoral collective bargaining across the economy, bringing workers and employers together to agree legal minimum standards on a wide range of issues, such as pay and working hours, that every employer in the sector must follow. Sectoral collective bargaining will increase wages and reduce inequality. This will also stop good employers being undercut by bad employers. We will tackle insecurity by giving everyone full rights from day one on the job, strengthening protections for whistleblowers and rights against unfair dismissal for all workers, with extra protections for pregnant women, those going through the menopause, and terminally ill workers. Ending bogus self-employment and creating a single status of worker for everyone apart from those genuinely self-employed in business on their own account, so that employers cannot evade workers' rights, and banning overseas-only recruitment practices. Introducing a legal right to collective consultation on the implementation of new technology in workplaces, banning zero-hour contracts and strengthening the law so that those who work regular hours for more than 12 weeks will have a right to a regular contract reflecting those hours. We will help people balance work and family life by increasing wages through sectoral collective bargaining, requiring breaks during shifts to be paid, requiring cancelled shifts to be paid and proper notice for changes in hours, giving all workers the right to flexible working, extending statutory maternity pay from 9 to 12 months, doubling paternity leave from 2 weeks to 4 and increasing statutory paternity pay, introducing statutory bereavement leave, guaranteeing workers time off to grieve the loss of close family members or following miscarriage, introducing 4 new bank holidays celebrating our 4 patron saints' days, reviewing family-friendly employment rights, including rights to respond to family emergencies. We will make sure people are treated equally at work by requiring employers to devise and implement plans to eradicate the gender pay gap and pay inequalities underpinned by race and/or disability or face fines. Requiring employers to maintain workplaces free of harassment, including harassment by third parties. Increasing protection against redundancy for people wherever they work. Giving statutory rights to equalities representatives. Setting up a royal commission to bring health, including mental health, and safety legislation up to date. Ensuring that public-facing workers are protected by toughening the law against abuse and violence. Banning unpaid internships. We will remove unfair and unnecessary restrictions on trade unions, allowing people to come together and speak up on issues that affect them at work. We will allow trade unions to use secure electronic and workplace ballots. Remove unnecessary restrictions on industrial action. Strengthen and enforce trade unions' right of entry to workplaces to organise, meet and represent their members and to recruit. Ban union busting, strengthen protection of trade union representatives against unfair dismissal and union members from intimidation, harassment, threats and blacklisting. Repeal anti-trade union legislation, including the Trade Union Act of 2016, and create new rights and freedoms for trade unions to help them win a better deal for working people. Simplify the law around union recognition. Give union reps adequate time off for union duties. We will develop collective income protection insurance schemes for the self-employed. We will introduce a maximum workplace temperature to protect workers and require employers to take counteracting measures. For years, the UK has been in breach of our international obligations. We will bring UK law into line with the International Labour Organization standards it has ratified, so Britain leads the world instead of engaging in a race to the bottom. Working time. Time off to rest, relax and be with family is essential to a happy and fulfilling life. But workers in the UK put in some of the longest hours in Europe. Labour will tackle excessive working hours. Within a decade, we will reduce average full-time weekly working hours to 32 across the economy with no loss of pay, funded by productivity increases. We will meet this target by ending the opt-out provision for the EU Working Time Directive and enforcing working time regulations, setting up an independent working time commission to advise on raising minimum holiday entitlements and reducing maximum weekly working time, mandating bargaining councils to negotiate reductions in working time, investing to increase productivity and making sure workers share the benefits. We will keep restrictions on Sunday trading in place and review unpaid overtime. Enforcement. Rights don't mean anything unless they are enforced, but that is not happening under the Tories. That doesn't just hurt workers who lose out, it is also bad for employers who follow the law and are undercut by unscrupulous competitors prepared to break it. Strong trade unions are the best and most effective way to enforce rights at work. Labour will introduce a new, unified Workers' Protection Agency to enforce workers' rights, including a real living wage. It will be given extensive powers to inspect workplaces and bring prosecutions and civil proceedings on workers' behalf. We will keep employment tribunals free, extend their powers, and introduce new labour courts with a stronger role for people with industrial experience on panels. Rewriting the rules. Social justice also means levelling the playing field between big and small business, and ensuring that democracy and accountability are valued across society, including in the private sector. Businesses are the heartbeat of our economy, creating jobs, wealth and innovations. But the upper echelons of corporate Britain have been corrupted by a culture in which the long-term health of a company is sacrificed for a quick buck for a few. A short-term culture has seen some treasured companies' assets stripped, leaving workers, small business suppliers and pensioners in the lurch. Too often, the link between reward and long-term performance is broken for short-term greed. Labour will take on short-termism and corporate greed, making sure good businesses are rewarded, not undercut. We will rewrite the rules of the economy and ensure everyone plays by them. We will tackle late payments that leave small businesses waiting months to be paid, including banning late payers from public procurement. For small businesses, we will ensure no quarterly reporting for businesses below the VAT threshold. We will require 1/3 of boards to be reserved for elected worker directors and give them more control over executive pay, because when those who depend on a company have a say in running it, that company generally does better and lasts longer. We will introduce a broader public interest test to prevent hostile takeovers and asset stripping, weakening our industrial base and destroying treasured homegrown companies. We will give workers a voice on public bodies such as the Competition and Markets Authority. We will let struggling companies go into protective administration so they can be sold as a going concern rather than collapsing into insolvency. Audits are vital to corporate accountability, but the auditing industry is dominated by a few players riddled with conflicts of interest. Labour will separate audit and accounting activities in major firms and impose more robust rules on auditors. We will tackle regulatory capture and streamline regulation by creating a new business commission responsive to parliamentary select committees. Social Justice Commission. Labour will usher in a new era of social justice in Britain. Everyone in our society should be allowed to flourish regardless of what class or postcode they are born into or the colour of their skin. But that's impossible when you cannot meet your most basic needs and have to choose between eating and heating your home. Britain is one of the richest countries in the world, but under the Tories millions of people can't make ends meet. They tell us we shouldn't care about inequality because social mobility allows those who work hard to get on, but nobody becomes a billionaire through hard work alone, and as inequality has grown, it has become more entrenched. For Labour, the true measure of fairness is not social mobility, but social justice. Implicit in the notion of social mobility is the idea that poverty and inequality are acceptable, provided some people can climb the social ladder. Social justice, on the other hand, demands that we end poverty, reduce inequality, and create a society in which the conditions for a fulfilling life are available to everyone. Labour will replace the Social Mobility Commission with a Social Justice Commission, based in the Treasury, with wide-ranging powers to hold us and future governments to account.